name is Laurel.
Good morning.
I am a real estate broker in New York City. I also happen to be Emily Ackner's grandmother. That's my claim to fame. So I've been a real estate broker for a long, long time. Some people think that my first client was George Washington, but that being said, it makes me perfectly prepared to work with you today since you're going to be doing colonial brokerage, essentially. But let's understand a couple of terms. Does anybody understand what real estate is, actually? Does anybody know what that term means? I'll give you a hint. You start out with land.
I have one on my street. There was this land, and then they started building a house on it.
That's right. So real estate is land with anything that's permanently attached to it, such as
House.
a house, or what else?
Building.
What else could be on land?
A barn,
A barn,
Building.
frogs, like
Building.
sure.
Oh,
What's that?
I was gonna say that. Like a store?
Absolutely. Those are things that are permanently attached.
A
You have
building.
another idea?
A building.
Any kind of a building. It
Yeah.
could be a commercial building where
Yeah.
people work.
Yeah.
That would be real
Or a
estate.
residential building.
Right. And the other term we should know about is what is a real estate broker? Does anybody have a guess about what that is? What I do?
Somebody who sells houses?
That's right. It's a person who helps an owner sell a house, or on the other side of the coin, it's a person, a buyer who wants to buy a house will use a broker. A broker is a person who is licensed. You have to take a test for this. You have to be knowledgeable. And when you take a test, you get licensed, and then you're able to work. And when you work and you get paid, do you think you get a salary? As if you go to an office every day? No. The only time a real estate broker gets paid is if a sale is made. So that's why with every sale, it's so important, because if you don't make the sale, you don't get paid. And what is the fee paid to a broker called? Does anybody know? It's a certain word that's used because it's not a salary, not a tip. What do you think it's called?
Seller's fee?
It's called a commission. So that's an important word for you to know. Because when you talk to sellers, you'll want to know what your commission is. Commission generally is a certain percentage of the sales price. And that's a term, that's a fee that is discussed between you and the owner of the house. And it's generally, well, there are different fees in different states, but we don't have to go into that right now. So now that we have those two terms, I wanted to simplify the process, and I've broken it down to what I call the 4 Ps. The first one, in order to sell a house, you have to have a listing of the house. You have to be engaged, you have to be hired by the owner of the house. So what are you going to do? You're going to meet with the owner, discuss with him his options, what kind of house he has, what kind of thoughts he has about what he can do with the house. But mostly at that moment, you are trying to sell yourself so that he will hire you. And you have to present yourself as the best broker and the person he wants to represent him in the sale. So this is called, anybody have an idea of what this is called when you meet with the seller and try to sell yourself?
Pricing.
Not yet.
Oh.
No.
But
It's
that's
called the pitch.
Oh.
Can I write on this one too?
No, the other side. The other side?
Well, the first P is the pitch. You're pitching yourself. You are trying to persuade the owner of the house that you're the best guy for the job. You know the area, you know the prices of the different houses, you might live in the area. All of these things you have to bring to that meeting, your personality, your knowledge, your experience. And so we call it the Pitch. Okay. Once that's established, and once you're hired by the owner of the house, you have another P that we have to talk about. What do you think that is? What's the next thing that an owner wants to know when he's selling his house? Anybody guess? How about the price? Mr. Owner is going to say, okay, Miss Broker, you know all about the neighborhood, you know all about my house. What do you think it's worth? Does that price come from the sky? How will you know? We're going to go over to our houses. You have to do some research as a real estate broker. And you have to know what houses in the area have either sold and are currently on the market. So for our demonstration, we're going to talk about houses that are currently on the market and why they are priced the way they are. So this is the house that you're going to sell. It's a 3-bedroom house. And we're going to say it's in good condition. We'll talk about condition in a minute. And this house is, let's say we have birch, oak, maple, and we could have this house on Spruce Street. So it's all in the neighborhood, give or take a few blocks. It doesn't have to be next door, it doesn't have to be across the street. So you're researching the neighborhood. What's on the market now? First house you come upon is a 2-bedroom house. Now remember, the house that you are trying to sell is a 3-bedroom house. So you look at this 2-bedroom house, and it's kind of in terrible condition. As far as you're concerned, it's like a dump. Really horrible. So, but you know it's on the market for $8,000. The house may be in poor condition, but it has a great location. You heard that expression, location, location, location? So this is a great location. Why? It's near the school, it's near the church, it's really very convenient. So even though it's in poor condition and it needs a lot of work, actually, because of the location, the person who was handling the sale of this, remember it's probably another broker, priced it at $8,000. Okay, now you get to another street, and here we are on Oak Street, and there's a big house, larger than the house that you're going to represent. This house has 4 bedrooms, it's in great condition, it's still in a good location, and what is this one priced at? $12,000. So already you see why one might be priced one way, one isn't. Now you come to another house, and this house is on Maple Street, kind of similar in size to the house that you're going to represent. The condition is only so-so. Maybe it's an oldish kitchen, maybe the rest of the plumbing isn't so great, maybe the floors aren't so pretty, but it's usable, it's something where someone could live in, and you would consider it to be fair condition. That one is priced at $9,000. Okay? So now you have what we call, there's a word for it. Does anybody know when you are looking at different houses against the house that you might be representing? We now have the comps. What is that short for? Comparable. We have comparable listings to the house that we're planning to sell. So this house over here is $8,000. This one is priced at $12,000. This one is priced for $9,000 for all the reasons we just talked about. What should we price this one at? This is what you have to tell your seller. Anybody have a number? What do you think would be the right number?
Maybe like 10,500.
9,500?
She said 10,000.
Possibly.
She said
Possibly.
10,000.
But this, remember, is in not great condition. This is in better condition.
She said 10,000.
And let's say this one is let's say this one is near school and shopping. Okay? So it's the same, about the same size as this house, that's 9,000. So you're kind of going to lean to the house that's 9,000. You wouldn't price it anywhere near this one because this one's, first of all, smaller and in poor condition. Our house is in good condition, 3 bedrooms. It's most like the house on Maple Street, right? So what do you think the price should be?
10,500.
I think you're right.
Guys, I'm Mr. Peterson, by the way.
He's the other social studies teacher.
Why is this so important for your project, especially for your project?
Because you don't want to overprice the house or underprice it, and so, like, if you overprice it, people aren't going to want to buy the house.
But why, you're right, but why is it so important for this project especially?
Because, like, you don't want to know the condition. Wait,
Do you have, it's the 1700s, 1600s. Do you have any idea what a house costs? Are you going to be able to find a record of what they bought that for? Probably not. So what you're going to have to do is somehow find out what houses, it might not even be in that neighborhood for your project, but it might be in that town because your research is going to be limited. What did a house comparable, you're still going to have comps, during that time period, go for? If you don't have, so this is a very important part of your project or your research is to find out what a house in 1680 went for in Guilford, Connecticut. I mean, how are you going to find that is going to be difficult. So this is why this part of it is very
Also, as McKenna said, the location piece we haven't talked about, so thank you for bringing that
Oh,
up,
yeah.
because that's huge. That is so, so, so important, so thank you.
Well, especially, I guess even in those days,
Yes.
where everything was so limited that you wanted to be, it was so important to be near a school or a church.
What are the first 2 things, even in New England, that they built? What are the first 2 things they built in the center of town?
School.
School and
Church.
church. So you want to be near that. The other thing is, what do you want to be near? What's going to be a good location in 1600s, 1700s? What do you think? Near what?
The town square where you can buy goods.
Okay, good. What else? How about geographically?
Like, next to the land.
So what's that going to be? Near what?
On the water.
Water.
And
Connecticut.
land.
If you look at Connecticut, for example, the first 3 settlements are in Wethersfield, Hartford, and Windsor, which are all on the Connecticut, and then Saybrook, which are all on the Connecticut River. Okay, so that's your location.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's great. So that's why when you're going to be doing your research, whether it's pretend or not, you have to get a sense of what other houses will be. And obviously, the more a house has on its property, on its land, the more valuable it is. So if this house is not only near the school and the shopping, and maybe it has a barn next to it, maybe a stable, maybe there's a lot of land, extra land where he's farming. And if you're in Virginia, maybe he's farming tobacco or something of that nature, or cotton. And it could be a very big piece of property. What would that do? Would that bring up the value of the house? It would. As opposed to a house that might be a very small house, that's on a very small piece of property, and again, in not very good condition. So now you have the idea of what the comps are, and you can talk to the owner of the house and say, Mr. Owner, based on my research of the houses in the area which are currently on the market, I suggest that we ask 10.5 for your house. And he'll say, that's great, that's great. Now we're going to come to the next P. Once you've got the price established, what do you think has to come next?
Selling the house.
It does, but there's one more step. And that step is the presentation of the house. What do you think that means?
Showing the house to people who want to buy a new house.
Well, what it means, anybody else have another idea?
Like showing people around the house.
We're going to get to that. Well, but we didn't have pictures back in the 1600s. You might have a sketch, something as nice as this. The presentation, you would have to say to your owner, after you have looked around his house, you certainly would never say to the owner, this house is disgusting. You would never say that. You have to be diplomatic as a broker, and you would say, Mr. Owner, you have a wonderful house here, but it needs some attention. There are some things that are wrong. You have a hole in the ceiling, and some buyers kind of get a little nervous if they see a hole in the ceiling, so my suggestion is you repair that. And also, Mr. Owner, your windows have different kinds of curtains and shades, and they're all in disarray and they're broken. That doesn't look so great. You ought to wash your windows. Also, any other ideas of what someone can do to enhance his home so that it's presented properly for showing?
Like, make stuff match.
Yes, that's right.
Like, if something's like kind of old, like floors, you could restore them.
Exactly. That's a great one.
You could like renovate parts of the house that aren't as like.
That's absolutely right. And what about the outside? What could you do to the outside of the house? How about painting a front door, making it an attractive color? What about taking out old shrubs and fixing your front yard? All of those things help with the presentation. And then you get ready for the next P. And what do you think that would be?
Selling the house.
Right, and we haven't named that, a word for it.
It's gotta start with a P.
And it's got to start with a P.
Party!
Baby, it has to start with
It
a.
is promotion.
Yeah, great.
So that's why you've got the 4 P's, and it's really easy to remember. The pitch, the pricing, the presentation, and then the promotion. What's the promotion? What does that mean?
Basically, it's like selling the house. There's some.
Getting down to really selling the house. Now, we're in the 21st century. We have a lot of tools at our disposal which enable us to sell houses, which enable me to sell a house. What do I use? What's the big word for the 21st century? Starts with a T. Not texting.
Technology.
We are in a world of technology, so selling a house is very different from today from what it must have been in the 1700s. We have email, we have Facebook, we have all kinds of search engines we can use. Aside from basic electricity, which we have. Okay, so what are we going to do in order to sell this house in a time where communication was limited?
Like, do they have newspaper? No.
There were newspapers, that's right. What would you do with a newspaper?
They could put it in the newspaper.
Put an ad in the paper. In fact, we still do that today, 300 years later. And what's in the ad? What would you say?
House for sale.
House for sale. What about the house?
Like house for sale, like say the price of the house.
And what else would you say about the house?
Like it's a
What are some words that we could use to describe the house, Em?
condition.
Yeah, so you might say, 3-bedroom house in excellent condition, well located, near schools and church. What else? Beautifully landscaped. What's another word that you could use? Charming, cozy, inviting, right?
Like very colorful.
Absolutely. A cheerful house, a sunny house. So these are the kinds of things that you would put in an ad. And would you also have to maybe put a sketch of the house so somebody could see what it looks like? Somebody who probably could draw a little better than I could do that for you.
So remember, so the best way to say it is, you're using 21st technology to sell a colonial house to colonial people in colonial times.
Because we're gonna use the technology you have today.
You are using that technology
Yes,
today.
yes.
So
Because we
all
wanna
the
make
things-
it, we wanna make it real.
Oh, you want to make it
We wanna make it
real.
so that
Oh,
if
I
there's
see.
some budding real estate agents here,
Yes.
that they are getting a head start.
So what are some technologies that you use in your
Yeah.
firm
Oh,
today?
the current technology. Oh, Well, certainly, we also do use ads in newspapers and magazines. We also use Facebook. We put a picture of the home on Facebook and write a blurb. Fabulous house.
And you guys can go on a Facebook and check it out and see it. You guys can make a Facebook page. You just don't make it public, and I can show you how to do it.
Right. We also will put, it's a very difficult, on the internet, the brokers exchange information, one broker with another broker. We call that co-broking. So if I have the listing of this house and somebody else has the listing for this house, we share the information so that everybody is aware of what's available on the market.
And you have a website?
Website, absolutely.
And you should check out her website, because
Right.
if you guys are building a website, again, you want to,
Let me write this down.
imitation is the best flattery, right? You might want to copy some things that they use at her real estate company. And again, you go on Google Sites, you go on Wiki, whatever you want to use, and you can make a website based on that stuff. And the listings will be right there.
The listings are right there.
So-
So that's why it's so much easier now today.
Right.
Because there were no listings listed anywhere years and years and years ago. But today there are. So if that's what you're going to do, it's a whole different thing. I had thought that people would have to make flyers, post them on trees, talk to your church groups, send out Paul Revere and say, here you, we have a house on the market.
The buyers are coming, the buyers are coming.
The buyers are coming.
You can
Exactly.
still do all of that. Just figure out how you're going to do it with technology. So they can still do that. They can post a flyer on a tree and take a picture of it and put it on the website.
People still do. And people still write letters to, if you were in the colonies, you could certainly write a letter to people in another colony to say that particular house is on the market. It's that kind of thing that you can do. And we do that today. So basically, you have to really, again, just go over quickly. If you go through the 4 Ps, that kind of helps you line everything up and know what you have to do. And it's kind of an easy way to remember what takes place. And when all of this is completed, and you show the house to the various people who come to look at it, that's when you'll hopefully get an offer from a buyer and present it to your seller. You may have to negotiate the price, because just because you're asking this price doesn't mean the owner will get it. You all know how to negotiate. You negotiate with your parents all the time, right? So you may ask 10.5, but a buyer may come along and say, you know, I like the house, but I don't think I'm prepared to pay any more than $9,500. And if you're asking 10.5, what does that mean? How far apart are you? $1,000, right? So do you think there's some middle place where you can end up? At 10,000. And your seller would say, you know, Miss Broker, you did a great job. I was asking 10.5, but you brought 10,000 to me, and I'm happy. You did a wonderful job, and we can close on this house. And that's pretty much it. So I hope that was helpful to everybody.
Is there any questions?
Do you have any questions? Is there something that I didn't tell you?
If you don't mind, I want you to come up with some things, because I thought you did some great things here that now you can ask more questions for yourself. When you're looking at a house in the colonial period, depending on your colony, what are some things that are going to attract a buyer? If you're living in the South, what are some things that are going to attract the buyer that you need to put in your pitch and in your, yep.
Like has farmland or something
Okay,
like that?
the amount of farmland is going to be big, right?
Has to be big.
All right.
Could it be like the climate sometimes? Like,
Well, you know what the climate is, right? So knowing the climate, what are going to be some things? You're not going to have air conditioning, right? So what are, and I don't even know the answer to some of these
Come on,
things.
Mr. Alabama.
Yeah, come on.
Come on.
What are some?
What is unique to Alabama or Georgia that's different than up here?
it's very warm.
So
and
what would
air
you need?
conditioning.
So what would you need if you're in 1700s? Probably, I'm guessing, and maybe a lot of what? Windows maybe? I don't know. I'm just guessing what the building's made out of. I think brick.
That was one of
Big,
my
cool in.
Yeah,
questions.
exactly.
If you go to like Georgia, there's a lot of brick houses. I'm like, why are brick houses? And they keep the warmth in it while they keep
Different climates need different kind of insulation.
Right, so that's
Yes.
important, the material.
How about,
Keeps the warm out.
I was thinking somewhere, how about the social class? What kind of social class do they have down the south they don't have in the north? What group of people?
He's not talking about higher.
Slaves?
Slaves. So you, guess what? If you have a slave house or slave quarters, you have to sell that. And I know that's against your nature because you don't want to talk about, but that's what, if you go to these old houses, they had slave quarters, they have slave houses. So you might want to, unfortunately, promote that. Okay, because you have to get back in time. Is there anything else you can think of that might be attractive? Because, you know, again, we're looking at these great things. Yep,
Maybe near like a lake or river.
perfect. All right. Water is incredibly important during that time period. Incredibly important. Port, near a port, right? Near commerce, near cities.
I think she has to get back to the city, so.
No, you're staying here the whole day. Thank you very much.
Thank you
I hope that's
so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have about 10 minutes if you